Welcome back to CrimePod Castle Unsolved Mystery Series, Episode 32. You ready to dive into another case?
Absolutely. Always up for a good mystery. What do we have today?
Okay, so strap yourself in for this one. We're looking into the Kurukshetra pregnant women murders.
Kurukshetra. Okay, I'm intrigued already. The name itself has so much history and weight to it.
Right. You think of this ancient battleground, a place of epic stories, and then bam.
2013, this peaceful town, suddenly a string of brutal murders.
And not just any murders. These were specifically targeting expectant mothers.
Okay, now that's chilling. What could possibly be the motive behind something so targeted?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one of the things that makes this case so disturbing. It's like the killer, or killers, wanted to make these women victims because they were pregnant.
Yeah, that really adds a whole other layer of complexity. When you see a crime that seems to defy typical motives, like robbery or sexual assault.
It makes you think about the psychology of the perpetrator, right? Like what kind of person targets expectant mothers?
Exactly. One possibility is that we're dealing with someone driven by an intense hatred for pregnant women. And the root of that hatred, well, that could be anything. A past trauma, maybe something linked to pregnancy or childbirth, or even some twisted ideology they've convinced themselves of.
So if we were investigators, where would we even begin to look for evidence to support that theory? I mean, it sounds so nebulous.
It's about piecing together a psychological puzzle. You'd have to delve into the person's background, look for indicators of mental instability, any past traumas, really dig deep. Even seemingly insignificant details matter, like online activity, what they write, even throwaway comments they make to people. You never know what might be a red flag.
So even just a casual remark about pregnancy could be a clue. That's fascinating.
Absolutely. Now, let's not forget, the Haryana police had a tough job with this case. I mean, lack of witnesses, limited forensic evidence. It's like searching for a needle in a haystack.
It sounds incredibly frustrating. What were some of their initial lines of inquiry? Where did they even begin?
They started by doing what any good investigator would do. Talking to people. Families, friends, neighbors of the victims, anyone who might have held a grudge or had a reason to want to harm them, but they found nothing connecting the victims.
So it's not like they all worked together or knew each other or anything like that.
Nope, nothing like that. It was like each murder was an isolated incident which only deepened the mystery.
It's almost like trying to catch a ghost, isn't it? So if it wasn't a personal vendetta against each victim, what else did they consider? Was a serial killer a possibility?
Oh, absolutely. The targeting of pregnant women, the brutality, the seeming randomness, it all pointed in that direction. But here's the thing. They tried to match the case details with known serial killer profiles, and nothing fit.
So this case just didn't fit any neat little box. It's like it was in a category all of its own.
Exactly. And that makes it even more unsettling. Then you have the possibility of ritualistic killings.
Okay, now we're getting into really creepy territory. I know I read somewhere that they considered that angle.
It's a chilling thought, right? Some belief system, maybe a cult, where pregnant women are somehow targeted, maybe seen as sacrifices or something like that.
But again, no concrete evidence to really support that theory.
Right, no specific symbols at the crime scenes or anything that screamed ritual. So while it's a disturbing possibility, it's hard to build a solid case around it.
So where does that leave us? We've got this string of brutal murders, no clear motive, no suspect, and I'm guessing a community living in fear. It's like a recipe for sleepless nights.
Absolutely. And it's that lack of closure that can be the hardest thing for a community to deal with, especially when the victims represent something so hopeful like new life.
Yeah, that just adds another layer of tragedy to the whole thing. So let's talk about the impact this had on Kurukshetra itself. What happened to the town after these murders? Did life just go on as if nothing had happened?
Oh, not at all. The town was deeply shaken. I mean, can you imagine?
Well, I can try, but I don't think I can truly grasp the fear and anxiety that must have gripped the community, especially for expectant mothers.
It would have been devastating. Think about it. It's like a fundamental sense of safety was just ripped away. Families became incredibly protective, right? Pregnant women probably wouldn't even step outside alone.
I bet even routine things like doctor's appointments would have been filled with anxiety.
Exactly. A town once known for its peace and tranquility, suddenly it's like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
It just makes you think about how fragile that sense of security can be. Did the increased police presence help at all?
Well, I'm sure it provided some comfort. The authorities stepped up patrols, tried to increase visibility.
But at the end of the day, how do you prevent something when you don't know what you're preventing? or who you're looking for that matter.
It's a real dilemma, isn't it? It's like trying to catch a shadow.
And that brings up another chilling thought. The killer, or killers, could still be out there. Did this unsolved case have any long-term effects on Kurukshetra? Did this fear just become part of everyday life?
Absolutely. Even years later, the shadow of those murders loomed large. People were more cautious, maybe a little more suspicious of strangers.
It's like the trust that holds a community together was shattered, and I'm not sure if that kind of thing could ever be fully repaired.
It's a tough question. How does a town truly heal when something like this happens? Especially when there's no justice, no closure. It's a wound that just keeps festering.
And I keep thinking about the families and the victims. Not only are they dealing with the grief of losing someone they loved, but there's this added layer of unanswered questions for me.
Absolutely. Imagine those constant what-ifs running through their minds. That search for answers that might never come.
It just feels like a profound injustice on top of an already unbearable loss. So where do we go from here? We've talked about the investigation, the impact this had on the town, the lingering questions. What's the most important thing for people to take away from all of this?
I think it's a stark reminder, even in a place like Kurukshetra, a place so rich in history and tradition, darkness can still find a foothold. These murders show us that evil can truly lurk anywhere.
And that even the most vulnerable among us can become targets. It's a scary thought.
It is. But it's also important to remember that even in the face of such darkness, there's always hope. Hope in the resilience of the human spirit, the strength of communities, and that pursuit of justice, even when it feels like a long shot.
That's a good point. It's not about ignoring the darkness, but about finding that light that shines through it. Maybe by keeping the memory of these victims alive, by talking about this case, by exploring all the angles, maybe that's how we contribute to that hope for justice.
I think so. By engaging with these tough stories, by thinking critically, by sharing information, we keep the conversation going. And who knows? Maybe someone out there has a piece of the puzzle that could crack this case wide open.
Maybe that crucial bit of information that could lead to a breakthrough. Now, I want to turn it over to our listeners. We've covered a lot, but what stands out to you? What are your thoughts on the Kurukshetra pregnant women murders? Do you think it was someone with a personal grudge against pregnant women? Or does that ritualistic killing theory seem more likely? Maybe there was more than one person involved. We want to hear what you think.
And it's not just about sharing your thoughts. If anything comes to mind as you're listening, any detail, any memory, any hunch, even if it seems insignificant.
Don't hesitate to reach out to the authorities. You never know, you might have that missing piece of the puzzle.
That one little clue could make all the difference.
You know, this case really highlights the importance of forensic science. We talked about how limited the evidence was, but what if they had access to the kind of technology we have today?
Right, like touch DNA analysis, that wasn't really around back in 2013. Imagine if they could have tested for those tiny traces of DNA left behind from a touch.
They might have found something on the victim's clothing, maybe at the crime scenes. Who knows what they could have discovered?
It really makes you think about those cold cases out there, right? Maybe there's a box of evidence sitting in storage somewhere, just waiting for the right technology to come along.
It's like a race against time, technology evolving, new methods being developed. Maybe someday, even cases like this will get a second chance at justice.
You've got to hold on to that hope, even when it feels impossible. Who knows what breakthroughs are just around the corner?
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into the Kurukshetra pregnant women murders, I have to admit, it leaves me with a lot of unsettling feelings. I mean, we may never really know what happened.
It's true. Some mysteries just stay with you.
But there's also a part of me that feels hopeful. Maybe someday justice will prevail. Maybe the truth will come out.
We can always hope for that.
Well said. Thanks for joining me on this journey into one of India's most perplexing unsolved mysteries. And to our listeners, please keep those wheels turning. Think about it, talk about it, and remember, if you have any information, no matter how small, contact the authorities.
You might be the one to help bring closure to this case.
And as always, don't forget to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle for more deep dives into the world's most fascinating unsolved mysteries. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep those theories coming.